So here we are at the third Sunday in Advent, and this week we turn our attention to the theme of joy. It's a little bit different this week because it's not me that's going to be sharing my thoughts, it's actually my brother-in-law Gary who's going to be bringing us his thoughts on joy. It was a video he produced for us back in August as part of our summer camp event, while we were looking at these same themes of hope, peace, joy and love. It's because I strongly feel that these are subjects and themes that we need to be taking into our hearts and our minds, especially at this time. What's better for us to be thinking about than hope, joy, peace and love? I hope that you've been finding these mini retreats useful, and don't forget, you can download the full resource using the link in the description below. So this Sunday, we hand over to Gary for his thoughts on joy.
Joy, joy, down in my heart. I could probably actually do that, and every time I say joy, cut to me in a different place in the room. That could be good. Don't know if I've got the time to do it. Probably don't. I've got the joy, 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 joy down in my heart. So if you haven't already guessed, as I've said it so many times, and it's probably already been introduced, and it's probably in the title of this video, but the topic for today is joy. And joy is a word that occurs in the Bible 218 times, which is hopefully a useful fact for you to know for the next Zoom Bible quiz. It's also 66 books in the Bible, so that's about like 3 times per book.
-1, that's free, quick maths.
But what we're going to be focusing on today is how it's used rather than when it's used. Because there's one simple message that I'd love you to get from today's video, and I'm saying it nice and clear early so you can skip through the rest of the video if you need to. But the message is this: joy is a movement, not a moment. Let me explain. So firstly, there's this separation between joy and happiness. They go well together though, a bit like apple pie and custard. It's a really random example. But two things that are different and they go well together. Now I can't stop thinking of apple pie and custard. Happiness is often attached to situations, people, places, moments. Whereas joy in the Bible appears as something deeper, attached to faith, hope and attitudes. Because of this, joy appears as a choice. It's something that we can choose, a direction we can point our lives to move in every situation. To help us think about this, we're going to look at a really great passage, which is Philippians 4:4. Here it is. Rejoice in the Lord always. I will say it again, rejoice. Let your gentleness be evident to all. The Lord is near. Do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation, by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your requests to God. And the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. It's a great passage. And this is such a great passage for many reasons. Firstly, it uses the word rejoice twice, which looking at the Google Analytics could really do with a boost right now. But the main reason is that I love that this is an invitation to move towards joy and peace and thankfulness, not just as like a moment or as an experience, but like something that happens always in our lives. And if you're anything like me, like hearing this can sound like an impossible directive, like to be joyful all the time, like how is that even possible? But this is why joy is so important as a movement rather than joy as a moment, because actually as a movement, you can think of it a bit like a run. Well, not necessarily a run if you don't like runs, like think of it as a horse ride. Is it a horse ride? A gallop? But the idea is that this is a movement that we choose to head in towards faith and hope in Jesus. And you see, some days that movement's going to feel harder than others, and that's completely okay, because each one marks out our growth in ourselves and in God. But here's a great thing, Nehemiah 8 has this verse, "The joy of the Lord is my strength." And I love that verse, because actually that tells us that each day God's joy is actually helping us to give us strength for the next day and the next day. It's like the gift that keeps on giving. And here's a cool thing, like in the Bible, very often they use this phrase like do something for joy. So it might be shout for joy, or sing for joy, or jump for joy, as per the example. That's actually the first time I've jumped on that bed. Man, I'm missing out on life. And one of the really interesting things is that actually sometimes that action is a result of joy, and sometimes that action brings joy. So there might be actions or patterns or habits in your life that God's inviting you to actually help to cultivate a spirit of joy. Can you hear those flies? Because they're driving me mad. Get out of this house. But I do need to pause it for a moment, because you can't talk about joy without talking about tragedy. And those experiences and moments in life which just shatter happiness and can really pull apart any structure of joy. Now my wife Abby has this really beautiful phrase which I think she found somewhere, but I don't know where she found it, so I'm going to credit it to her. And it's this: bright sadness. And it's a beautiful phrase that invites us to embrace the experience of the sadness while still sensing the joy. Because joy is a movement, not a moment. So it's not about rushing away or ignoring those experiences in our lives. But it's also not about dwelling in them or allowing them to take control or hold of who we are. Instead, joy becomes this movement that helps us to journey through it. It might seem for you right now that in the middle of exams and lockdown and cancelled plans and holidays, that joy just feels a million miles away right now. But joy is a movement, a direction we travel in with actions we can practice. And it's so much better when we do it together. So because community is so important, why not message a friend? Like I can do it right now. 1 second. I actually got a message, that never happens. Right. Hey man, I'd really love to move more in joy this week and wondered if you'd join me on the journey. Maybe we should touch base each day just to hear how we found joy in that day and what we're going to do the next day. Lots and lots of love, Gary. Got a bit of a bromance. So may you find the space, the community and the opportunity to join this movement of joy. For the happy times and for the sad times, for the bright sadness and more. For the challenges you're going to face, the obstacles you're going to overcome, for the happiness you're going to find. May you move in joy all the days of your life.
Just for a change this week, we're not using words of Paul to sign off, but rather words that are found in John and Jesus' words to his disciples. In John chapter 15, which is one of my favourite chapters in the Bible, we find Jesus encouraging and building up the disciples, and he says to them, "If you keep my commands, you will remain in my love, just as I have kept my Father's commands and remain in his love. I've told you this so that my joy may be in you and that your joy may be complete." My prayer is, as you continue through this Advent season, that you receive the joy of Jesus into your life and that your joy will be made complete.